Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a coach and podcaster, Mr. Michael Kurkowski. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm good, Ryan. Appreciate you having me on, man. This should be fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I want to deep dive into some of the stuff I've seen you talking about.
Let's
Kind of
go, man.
interested in it.
Jump right in. Yep.
All right. The number one question the audience probably wondering, who is Michael Kurkowski?
Yeah. So I'm a coach. I've been coaching for 17 years. I run 2 podcasts myself. So I found really recently that the power of story is really how we learn so much. That's why I've dove so deep into the podcast world and writing and interviewing. But ultimately, my mission is to impact people in their health and connect strength in all different areas: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. So that's ultimately the mission that I'm trying to do on a day-by-day basis. And I just hope to God that I'm doing a pretty good job. So
Well, I love how you're combining all three.
mhm.
So what led you to become a personal trainer and get in the fitness industry?
Yeah, so to bring it all the way back, like most coaches that get into the field, I think I was always in athletics growing up. I played baseball, basketball, tennis. My dad was a great athlete. My sister was a great athlete. So it was always around kind of the comeuppance of doing athletics. But I was also never like the best on the field. I was a good athlete. I was talented in some ways, but not the most athletic or gifted. So I couldn't just rely on like being the best out there and just go and play. Like I really had to figure out how to get better if I wanted to keep competing. So I say that because early on I had an affinity for practice. Like the days when we went to practice as a kid, like I really almost enjoyed that more than playing the games, which is kind of very weird as a child because usually you just want to go and play the games. Like I really found practice was where you went to get the details and work on technique and try and get better at whether it's your baseball swing or your jump shot or your forehand. Like I always kind of realized that training was a really important part of it. So that was early on. And then things changed a bit for me when I was 14 years old, Ryan. So at that point, I had to have emergency surgery on my hip. So what it's called is it's called a slipped epiphysis, which essentially just means my femur slipped out of my growth plate. And it felt very much at that age like a bad groin pull, like you just pulled a muscle and it wasn't going away, kind of lingered all through basketball season at the time. I was trying to stretch it out, didn't really know what was going on. It just wasn't getting better. So eventually my parents brought me to an orthopedic and he saw it immediately. And then from an x-ray, pretty much said, well, you see how like the femur is outside here? It's supposed to be in there. So we need to bring you in today and put a pin in your hip and you're going to be off your feet for about the next year. So yeah, that was pretty life changing at that moment for a time, thinking I was going to have to go in and do some physical therapy. All of a sudden I had to be in an emergency surgery and that took me off of my feet for about a year at that time. Like it's a pretty aggressive recovery, and they really want to make sure that that pin is solidified in there before they, start putting weight back on that leg. What was weird about that time is it was a very identity shifting time for me because all my friends were in sports. I was going right into high school, so all my old friend group kept going and kept playing sports, and I was kind of sidelined. So I was kind of a loner and isolated for a lot of time throughout the beginning of high school and never really fully got back into athletics till eventually when I was like 17, 18 or so. I had this kind of pipe dream still to play professional baseball and wanted to try and make a go at it. So I, joined a gym. I actually got a personal trainer at that time and got in really, really good shape. And it was like the first time that I really felt like the positive effects of being in really good physical health and doing it for my own at the same time. So that started to plant a seed into like the physical side of strength for me. Then a little bit down the road, I moved to Florida, tried to, play baseball, didn't work out. I moved back to New York, where I'm from. And I was just working at a restaurant till eventually a buddy of mine who worked at the restaurant with me was a personal trainer at this gym not too far from me. And I was looking at kind of getting back into shape. I let myself go for a little bit during that hiatus time. And he introduced me to the world of functional movement systems from Gray Cook and Lee Burton, and really like the assessing the body for asymmetries and compensations and seeing if the body's out of balance before just adding strength and adding, aesthetics. So he put me through an entire assessment of my body. And going back to my injury at 14 years old, I didn't realize that I developed so many asymmetries and compensations in my movement that I wasn't aware of, that he put me into a protocol of like getting my body into good balance on both sides. And I got to tell you, like, I felt amazing from the work that we were doing. It was very different than what I was doing before, which was just beating the shit out of my body, like for years beforehand. Like, I thought that's how you trained, till eventually he was putting me through specific things that worked well for me and how I moved. And it was an eye-opening experience because I didn't realize that I didn't feel really good and amazing until I got my body into balance and felt really good afterwards. So that kind of was where I started to really get fascinated by the capabilities of the human body and looking into physiology and kinesiology and like optimization, all that type of work, till eventually my friend who was training me was managing that club. And he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a personal trainer? I think you might be good at it." And I was like, "Well, how does it work? Like, what do you do?" And I was kind of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do at that point. So I decided to give it a go and got a job at that place with him, worked at that place, promoted a bunch of different space, managed it for a while. I just instantly fell in love with it. I always knew I wanted to work with people. I wanted to help people. And right away, it was like, I realized like I found what I wanted to do. And I was really good at it right off the bat of working with people. So that was 2008. So this is almost like 16, 17, 18 years I've been doing this, and a lot of evolution since then. But really, that's what kind of started the whole process.
Wow, man, you were kind of just led to that position. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So what have you noticed in regards to between the relationship between fitness and mindset?
Yeah, I mean, we think of them as separate practices in many ways, but in so many ways they go hand in hand. The best way I can describe it with mindset, because I work with a lot of people on the mental performance side of things, but I think there's this illusion that being in a strong mindset is like this place that you just arrive at, and eventually then you're in the room, and then like you're like everything's good afterwards. You're resilient, you're capable, you can overcome like everything that life throws at you. But just like your strength with your physical body, you're going to have good days and bad days. Like, it's going to ebb and flow like anything. So what I found is that mindset and like mental performance is a skill, just like going into the gym. You go into a gym and you learn how to lift weight, right? There's a skill set involved in that. Like anybody who's, got underneath a barbell or, grabbed a kettlebell before and really tried to work on the skill of it, that it's practice. Some days you're really good, other days you're not so good. And there's a bunch of days in between all of those right there. But just the practice of just working on it and just going into it on a day by day basis of holding yourself to standards over expectations, I think that is the foundation that we're all trying to get to. So I remember there was a quote that Luca Hussover said on the Strength Connection podcast that I run, that I always go back to when he talks about mindset, is the best thing that you can do is just aim to have less shitty days. And what I mean by that is we always think of like having the best of the best days, like always like we want like the best things to happen possible. But more often than not, like there's a bunch of days in between there. If you focus on raising your floor rather than elevating your ceiling, then naturally, even if you have a tough day, maybe tough mentally, maybe tough mood wise, maybe tough strength, maybe just tough with outside external obstacles that are coming in, you keep raising your floor up. So days that were maybe a 1 or 2, you raise those up to a 3 or 4, then you're never falling so far down. And that's where I think you can bring in things like Stoicism or Taoism into all this stuff. They're all kind of saying the same thing, is be more emotionless about what you can't control and focus on what you can control. And I think that's really the, the practical aspect of mental performance, the best way that I can describe it.
I love that quote. That's a very good quote. I couldn't agree more, though, with you on a lot of that, because, like I tell everybody, like, you have to train your mind every day, just like you're going to a gym to train your body. And it needs to be a daily focus and habit. Like you said, going to have good days, going to have bad days. You just have to keep pushing forward, and eventually you're going to get to a place that's better. But, like, as you notice this, why do you think so many people like ignore that aspect of it?
I think it's because, like I said before, is we look at like a mindset as something that we need to arrive at, and we're supposed to possess like in this specific way, where as soon as we get it, we don't like it never hinders, it never leaves, again. And I think it's also something that, when we look at something like developing strength, right? So if you look at just a hypothetical metric, like of squatting 315 pounds, right? We naturally know that if you want to get there to like arrive at that goal and you can squat 135 pounds and you want to elevate that up, you know that it's going to be a process to get there, right? You're going to need to put in some work, and you add a little bit to the bar over and over again. And, or if if you want to drop weight, if you want to get to a certain aesthetic, right? We know that it's going to be a process to get there. I think when we look at developing a strong mindset is we think that it's something inherently that you have or you don't have. And like, it's this easy thing, like we just need to shift this mode and immediately get there. No, it's the same thing as any type of goal that you get to. Like if you want to have a peaceful, calm mind, but you're very anxious, or you just have a tendency to be very erratic. Well, to think that you're just going to go from, one to the other with just a flip of the switch. No, it's going to take practice to get there. Like it's going to take days where you're a little bit less anxious or a little bit, more calm, but it's going to be very small increments that you get to. And I think where the struggle with working on your mind is we often think that it's supposed to be this immediate thing that you get to, right? You do a meditation practice and you're immediately supposed to feel this bliss like the Dalai Lama, or you do some breath work for a day and you instantly supposed to feel calm, right? And then as soon as you arrive at that, you're supposed to just stay there. No, it's going to ebb and flow just like anything. And often it's from things that have no rhyme or reason, Ryan. Anybody who's been in the strength game for a long time knows that you can do everything right. You can get your great sleep. You can be properly hydrated. You can have your nutrition down. You can do a great warm up. And some days you just feel stronger than others. And there's no reason behind it. It's like just eventually when you put enough reps in the tank, some days you're just going to be more on versus off. And I think that's where, if you can go into a day being like, okay, like I was a little bit off today, and then immediately, if you can have some self-compassion for that and be like, all right, I was off today, tomorrow's going to be better, and actually put in some practices that you can do on a daily basis to give yourself the best scenario to have a good day or be in a good mindset, then that's the best that we can do. But I think often is we don't give ourselves grace at all when it comes to having a strong mind as much as we do with other big goals that we have: physical goals, financial goals, relationship goals, those things that we know are going to take some time. We don't often look at it the same way when it comes to mindset.
Yeah. You run your own coaching business now, right?
Yes.
So what kind of services do you provide?
So most of the people that I work with now, I've had my own practice for coaching for the last 3.5 years. Was personal training in person for a bit. I was in a studio before with some partners of doing stuff. But now my focus that I work with people is those who are in, I call them the advanced beginner stage. So what I mean by that is most people that I see, they've done some good work for themselves. They've built some consistency in some habits, whether it be their physical training, whether it be their mindset. Maybe they've gone past the beginning stages of getting out of the rut. But now they're in that middle zone where, like, the things that they did at the beginning that got them success aren't doing this, aren't giving them the same results again, and they don't know really where to go to the next phase. So that's where I go into working with what is their programming, like what is their mindset, what is their stresses in their life, really looking at their overall life of what they want to achieve, not just by getting to a certain aesthetic of weight or strength or so, but really look at, like, what do they value the most in their life, and seeing where the pitfalls or the shortfalls have come in the past so we can overcome them now, and essentially create a program that molds around their lives rather than their lives mold around a program. Okay. And I do this because this is a demographic that we don't talk about a lot, specifically in the fitness industry. Is most things that you see in health and fitness are catered towards the beginner, right? It's a 6-week challenge. It's the couch to 5K program, or everything. It's all about getting off the, like, doing nothing and going to do something, right? Couple reasons for that. One is it's a very easy sell for people. Like, it's an emotional response that you're trying to get. And also, if you go from doing zero to doing anything, you're going to see a response to it. So most people are very good at the beginning stages. Where 95% of people fall off is somewhere in that middle zone. And that's where they jump to another program, or old habits or old stories started to come back into their mind. And that's when they start falling back into old habits and end up where they were before. So it's this yo-yo cycle of success and failure that we see often, specifically with adults. So what I aim to do is really look at not just where do we need to go, but what are the things that have tripped you up in the past before? Because it's so often that people jump to another program, but essentially do the same exact thing as they did before. They ramp it up for 6 weeks or even 3 months or 6 months, but eventually go back into their old habits. My aim is to really look at not just getting them off the snide, but where are the pitfalls going to happen from there, and helping to shape the new identity at that moment, so they can not just succeed at the goals, but build a system of success that's repeatable over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. I see it so much, even at my gym. Like, I was sitting there talking with one of the managers the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, my boss is on me to get more people in here, and we have people not, or people canceling their memberships and everything." I'm like, I was thinking, like, man, all the gym models are kind of the same though anymore. Of, let's get all these people in here to pay for a membership, get them booked in, and then next thing you know, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's like, how can we make changes to that?
Well, one is, it's, here, there's a quote about retention that I think is always interesting, and I think of a lot, is retention is not preventing people from leaving. It's giving them a reason that they want to stay. So I think of that often with, with working with any type of service, right? And every gym owner I know is probably in the same boat. How do we get more people in? How do we get more people in? And all this type of work. The reality is like, most people, especially in the virtual world, is crazy right now with virtual coaching and online coaching and stuff. Most people stay for 2 to 3 months, and then they're jumping to the next thing. Okay. We sign new people up all the time in just the industry in itself. We have a very poor retention program from there. And that is more so because, and this is my take, it's not just my take. I've talked to 500 people in the last 4 years on podcasts of doing this work. It's, if you don't change the story that you tell yourself about yourself, you're eventually going to go back into old habits. And I think that's where we don't talk about that a lot as coaches, is we focus on tactics and strategies. We focus on programs all the time. All right, this is an awesome program. This is going to get you here and there and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all well and good. But like eventually that person, if they don't believe that they can change, or if they're still holding on to an old identity or waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time, eventually is they fall back into old habits. And that's what we don't talk about a lot from there. This, you probably heard this before, Ryan. I always think of this is someone's on a weight loss journey, right? And they want to lose 50 pounds, right? And they lost 5 pounds or 6 pounds in a couple weeks, right? And you're like, oh my God, dude, that's awesome. Like you're on a great track, way to go. Often, how is their response? Well, I still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Like I still got a long way to, right? It's this contract that people are making with themselves to not be satisfied until they get to this, next result. And more often it's because they're still holding on to that old identity of not fully believing that they can arrive and get there. And that's a challenging thing to overcome. It's something that needs to be worked on a day-by-day basis. That's why I think intentions, daily victories at the end, affirmations with the evidence of who you've been before, creating your own client, like creating your own avatar of your ideal person of who you want to be. I mean, all these different practices that you can go into. It's not something that we really dive into a lot, specifically in like the training space. And I'm not throwing shade at it on there. I think rightfully so. Like if you're a personal trainer, if you're a coach, you have a specific skill set that you're working with. But I think the biggest thing that we can do is treat the person like a whole person. Like that, the person that's coming in and a client that you're working with, this is a person that has a lot of responsibilities. They've got 1,000 more things that are going through their mind that they're telling you about, and they often don't know how to express them or what they're really going through. So I think the best thing that often we can do is shut up and listen to the people that we're working with. And if you do that, like, people are going to tell you like, what they're feeling and where they need to be. And sometimes you need to be more of just a friend to people rather than a hard-nosed coach that's telling them what to do.
I like that. Like I always knew, and I knew this from a while before that, like you have to get people to change their mindset to get them to start believing in themselves a little bit more, to get them to kind of to keep going down that fitness journey. So what is intuitive training and why is it so vital for achieving your full potential?
So intuitive training is something I've dabbled in a lot over the past 5 years or so. I think in a nutshell, it's training without a specific program that you're following. And I have a love-hate relationship in some ways with this, Ryan. I think it's really essential for a lot of people to get to at a certain stage of their journey, specifically those people who are kind of in that advanced beginner or kind of like, evolved past the early stages of their journey to get into. What it is I think it's trusting your own body and learning more about your own body to arrive at your training with a question rather than an answer. So what I mean by that is if you're just following a specific program where on this day you're supposed to do this, on this day you're supposed to do this, right? Regardless of what else is going on in life and everything like that, you're supposed to follow this plan and this program down, okay? I'm not saying that is a bad thing to do, but I think more often than not, if you don't listen to your body and you're just only focusing on following this set structure and this set plan all the time, is you're becoming a very good soldier. You're very good at following orders, but you're not really a good general of really leading your body or leading your life into what you're aiming for. So the goal that I want for anybody that I work with is that fitness and your health, it should be a part of your life that accentuates the other things that you value in your life, right? It shouldn't be like this sentence that you need to serve in order to get everywhere that you need to be. So if you need to take a day off or so, like, yeah, that's fine. Like, as long as you really understand like what's going on with your body. There's days that you need to train lighter. There's days that you need to train more in the mid-level. There's days that you need to push it and you need to push past the next phase. But Pavel Tatsulin has a great line about strength training is amateurs only know one speed, and that's pedal to the metal. It's like the professionals know when to approach a day in a light day, in a medium day, or in a heavy day. Like they really approach their light days in the gym with as much reverence and as much importance as the heavy days. So I think that is something with intuition that really comes into play, that if you really want to like master health and fitness in your life, then eventually there's going to come a point where you need to kind of play inside the lines a little bit more rather than just follow, just a structured plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Why do you think some trainers are so adamant about making their clients follow them specific plans and not letting them have a little bit more free reign?
Well, one is I don't think again, I don't think it's bad. Like I'm not saying that like intuition is the only way to go. Like first I'll tell you a story. This is a major failure that I had years ago. Is when I was deep into like intuitive training for myself. Like I was doing a lot of work on going into every day, listening to my body, some specific biofeedback based programs that I was like listening to with my body. It was something I was really interested in. And I was gaining really good gains in my strength and also being very cognitively open and building my business. And so it was really kind of a win-win situation for me in a lot of different ways. And I thought I cracked a code. I was like, oh, this is what everybody needs to be doing. Like I thought I found like a secret sauce like 4 or 5 years ago. And I was really pushing intuitive training on a lot of people that I was working with. And what I found is some people did very well with it. Other people, it was a disaster because I was pushing intuition on people who didn't arrive at that level yet. I think intuition is something that is a skill just like anything. And if you don't have the ability or you haven't built the consistency up to follow like a structured plan and get into that and have that muscle developed in your, in your toolbox, then intuition is going to be way too overwhelming for people, right? If you haven't consistently followed a plan like for 6 months or a year and really knowing how to get through all the different seasons of life and still maintain consistency in your program, then I say get that down first. Don't go into intuitive training. Okay. But then if some people do, if they are at that program and kind of arrive at it, like in my program, we have four stages of mastery: recovery, discovery, creation, and mastery. So intuition really goes into that third stage with people, right? I think a lot of coaches, and I can see this, can get apprehensive about allowing that more because they don't want to lose control. They don't want to lose a client. They want to keep control under their thumbs because, they have a job and they're maybe in a little bit of a scarcity mindset and not realizing like that is not the operable way, to be living from there. So I get it. I've been there a million different times before. So I think that might be one of the reasons behind it. But two is also intuition is a skill that is a challenging thing to do. It's a much more challenging mentally, I think, than just, going in physically. Of being okay with having a lighter day or like a medium day and not pushing the body, even though like, all right, I was set today to really push it, but my body's telling me this is not, it's not saying like, oh, I just don't feel like it or not. Right. No, it's like developing the skill of being like, yeah, no, my body is telling me that I need a little bit of a lighter day in here. And there's ways to do that. There's dynamometers with grip tests. There is range of motion tests that you can do. I mean, there's a lot of different actual feedback tests that are out there to work on intuition. But I think that's probably why a lot of people shy away from it.
Okay. How can journaling and writing practices help in developing strength?
Journaling to me has been one of the biggest revelations that I've done in my life. And it's worked a lot with other people that I've talked to as well. We spend so little time by ourselves and understanding ourselves, Ryan. And I think that is journaling is an avenue that you can go in to just get inside your own mind and just to spend a little time in solitude. I think there's, I just talked about this on my podcast this week, is there's a difference between isolation and solitude. I think time in solitude is very powerful. Spending time with yourself and understanding your thoughts and being in silence with yourself is a really powerful tool that we don't do a lot, especially now in culture. We have noise around us every day, right? Most people spend 8 to 9 hours on their phone every single day. And if they're not on their phone, they have another screen in front of them from Netflix or, or YouTube or whatever it is, right? We're surrounded by noise. Okay. There's the old famous quote of Carl Jung, right? Most men will do anything, regardless of how ridiculous, to avoid facing their own soul, right? We spend so little time by ourselves. And I think if you just spend a little bit of time of just journaling down, it doesn't need to be a practice of profound declaration. Okay. I think this is where a lot of people think of what journaling is, right? It's a dear diary, this is what I did today type thing. And it starts to just become like a task list of this is what I did today type stuff. I don't see that as journaling. I go to journaling often with just a question. I do doodling. Sometimes I just do stream of consciousness of just clearing the clutter out of your mind. But if anything, I think it's the best thing is it's just time that you're dedicating to spend with yourself and just understand yourself a little bit more. And I think going back to the topic of mindset, most of the confusion that we have about being in a good state of mind is more so because we are just so overstimulated and we spend no time in our own mind. So I think whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whatever speaks to you or aligns with you, it's just spending some quality time with yourself. And I think if you do that for 10 to 30 minutes on a day-by-day basis, it can have profound effects on not just the work that you do, but the state of mind that you want to be in, right?
I couldn't agree more. I know in my own personal life, I have to journal at times to get all that, all them thoughts down at times, just because the mind's constantly running. It's like, man, I got to get it out, just out here on paper to get my emotions out and everything, especially if it's a bad day.
But I think, I look at journaling, Ryan, just like I talked about with other practices, like I look at everything through skill set, right? If you get better, you can get better at something and really see the results from it. But you have to just start with the consistency and holding yourself to a standard to it. I think when we look at things like mindset or journaling, I thought of this word from Thomas More is like, we go into it thinking like we need to have this profound declaration or this like big pivotal sentence or epiphany every time we go and step to the page, right? Where more often than not, you go in and it's just like going in and just getting a training session done, right? Not every day you go in and do a workout as you're going to hit a PR, right? Not every day is going to be like that. The more you do it, they're going to be more few and far between. But just going in and just approaching the page of just my only standard is I'm going in, I'm just going to journal today. I'm just going to write down something. And that's how I started. When 2020 is when I started journaling on an everyday basis. During the pandemic, everybody had a lot of internal changes that were going on. And there's a book that I read that really was a profound impact, which was Ryan Holiday's third book, Stillness is the Key. And he talks a lot about journaling. And nobody's ever read it. It's a great book, very easy read to go into, but he talks a lot about journaling at that point. And he quoted, I believe it was William Faulkner in that, where he said, writing is for the writer, not the reader. And that really hit me because I said, every time I tried to journal in the past, it was like I was writing something like someone else was going to read this, right? So I needed to be very censored in what I was saying. Like, what do I want to say that sounds really good? And that quote just said like, no, I'm just going to write for me. Like, I could burn this afterwards. I can tear it up and throw it away. No one's ever going to see this. This is just my own internal bullshit that I'm trying to get out of my head right now. It could be sloppy. It could be ugly. It doesn't have to be poetic or profound. My only focus is just to get words out on the page. And I said that I was going to go to journaling every single day. I could write one sentence or I could write for an hour. It didn't matter. My only standard was I just had to go every single day. And I did that. And some days were really profound. I had a lot of ideas of things that I've implemented and now are very big successes in the work that I do. But there's many days in between when I wrote one or two sentences. One day I remember I was like, yeah, I don't feel like writing today, but I told myself I'm going to come here. So that's all I'm going to write today. You know, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing as like going into a warm up. Just go in and just do a warm up. Just step in, just keep the consistency going. So I think if you approach it that way, you're going to find what you need to get out of it.
I like that advice of, hey, this is for you, not for the reader.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many people struggle with goal setting?
I think we approach goal setting on the surface and very poorly. So what I mean by that is every trainer, every person comes out. It's like, what's your goal, right? Oh, I want to lose 30 pounds and I want to get stronger. Okay, awesome. We start implementing a plan and we put it together right away and we start going towards that goal, right? There's no real connection of why the goals that we have are the goals that we have, right? The purpose of a goal is not to achieve a goal. It's what you become when you get there, right? Nobody wants to just look a certain way and just get there and just arrive. They want to do it because they feel like if they get to that space, then they are a person that's going to exude something else from there. Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's, appeal, maybe it's overcoming obstacles from the past or so. But I think we don't talk about why the goals that we have are the goals that we have. And I've seen this from a lot of different people, right? Is you ask one or two questions deeper, a couple layers deeper into the goal, and it's this deer in the headlights look that they get because we never go into that, right? And I think that's where we don't really know why we're achieving something. Often it's because we think we should be here. Someone else told us we need to be there. We don't actually connect, how is life going to change if I achieve this goal? That's a question I ask a lot of people. Like, how would life be different if, everything that you talked about and everything you want to achieve, how would life be different? Right? Is that actually is that a worthy change to do the work that you need to do to get to arrive there? Right? And the other question I ask often is, what happens if you don't achieve it? Like, is that okay? Is life any different? And I've actually had some people that were like, yeah, no, I don't really care that much about that. It's like, yeah, I'm fine if I don't arrive there. Okay, right. That's good realization from there. But it's like, and we started to look at some other things that were going on. But often we don't connect why we want to achieve certain goals. And I think if you don't do that, it's just too damn challenging. And life just gets too challenging that it's so easy to fall off if you don't really know why you're doing something, right? I've thought about this, like if you're trying to achieve a physical goal, right? And you start asking like, why is this important to you? And you start uncovering like things of, oh, like you want to lose 30 pounds, you want to have more energy. And I talk to like a father, right? How is that going to impact your relationship with your children? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be different? Right? Do you value being a good father? Are you a good father? Yeah, honestly, I'm a great father. I love my kids. I think I do really well. I do really well for them. Okay, cool. Like that's a strength that you have, right? All right. If you got in better shape or you achieved this goal, would that make you a better father, or would you feel like you could be a better father? Would that add to this thing that you already are strong at and add value to you? Yeah, it would. How would it? Okay, and start connecting those things together. And I think if you add those things in, Ryan, and you attach the goals that we have to the other values of what's really important to us in our lives, then when those days come when you don't want to do it, or it's a really challenging day, but you know that you've got a deeper reason why you're doing this past just an aesthetic look or just a superficial feel, it's going to be a lot easier to get out of bed and go do the things that you need to do, right? You go
Yeah.
to work, you go to work because you value living in a home or providing for your family, right? Do you go to work every day on like that you don't feel like going to work? Like if it's just a day that you don't feel like it because you're tired, do you just skip work? Like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Like you go because there's an added value on top of that. And I think if you approach the self-care goals that you have in the same way, then it's going to help you a lot more along the line.
Yeah. So you're really basically just recommend what you're doing is looking more for their pain points to find their whys.
Pain points, yes. That's an emotional response from there as well. But I found that if you really want to build a system of success where not just achieving a goal, but being able to achieve the goals past the goals that you have right now, it's looking towards increasing the pleasure rather than just avoiding the pain, right? I think avoiding pain and running away from something is a very powerful motivator, but it's much less fulfilling and it's much more short-lived. I think if you get to a point where the things that you're doing are really rewarding and you're seeing like the high value of it and it's really pleasurable and fulfilling in your life, that's a much more powerful way of approaching going towards a goal versus running away from something that you don't want.
Okay. You host 2 podcasts. What inspired you to start podcasting?
So the first one, during COVID, me and my former partner Chris, out of kind of boredom and also just looking at other things to do, is we decided to start one podcast. And I personally fell in love with it. I was a podcast listener. I've listened to podcasts before when I, started commuting years ago in a job. I found it really powerful, and I always loved the art of conversation, and I always learned so much from conversation that when we started doing the Breakthrough Secrets podcast, I instantly fell in love with it. I loved connecting with other coaches and hearing their stories and hearing, their failures and their insights with stuff that when I started my own business, this will be 4 years ago in August. I was trying to figure out like what was it I really wanted to do? Like what was the impact that I wanted to really create? And what was the content that I wanted to deliver out? And I said, I really loved podcasting. Like I really loved having conversations and asking asking good questions. And so I started the Strength Connection podcast. And right away after the first interview, 5 minutes in with my good friend Fabio Zonin, I said, oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to do. Okay. And so I started doing that. We're almost 300 episodes in at that point right now. And it's taught me more about people, about the psychology of success, about being my best self, and just the art of communication, I think, is the most powerful thing, and the power of storytelling. Storytelling is the oldest art form in the world. Before we had spoken language, people were telling stories, and we learned everything that we know now through stories. So I think to get people on who are incredibly successful and powerful coaches, and not just hear about their blueprints to success, but hear the stories of who they are, like about the times that they failed and overcame, and people who have impacted them in their lives, the questions that they're still asking themselves about, what they're trying to do, the biggest obstacles and hurdles that they've had. What are the questions that have, kept them up at night? Like hearing these like deep things about people, it's the most joyous thing that I do in my life. I love coaching. I've coached for years, but I leave conversations with people like I've had 3 shots of espresso. Like I absolutely love it. And I started my second show last year, which is called Inspire Saratoga. I'm from Saratoga Springs, New York, and I wanted to do a show specifically for my local community about the people who are aiming up in life and doing really inspiring things, not just in any health or fitness or coaching type space, just people who are doing really cool things. And I wanted to just learn more about the people in my area and highlight people who maybe a lot of people in the area don't know about, like unsung heroes. And I found there's a lot of really cool people in my area, and I wanted to just talk to them and see how I can get their story out there a little bit more. So that's where I spend the bulk of my time right now, is between the 2 podcasts.
Awesome. What's the most challenging part for you podcasting?
The most challenging part is probably my own self-criticism. It's like I always want to do better. I always want to highlight people in the best way. Anybody who markets something in the media world, that's always a challenging thing of getting in, trying to get it at as much eyeballs, obviously, as you want, to get into. But, just the balancing of everything is a challenge, just like everything of booking guests in there, making sure that I'm, properly prepared for everyone, editing it in the right way, putting it on the right channel, all this stuff. It's hard. It's a really good question. Nobody's asked me that before, Ryan, but because I love it so much, it feels like play in many ways. Just the challenging part for me is with the ambitions that I have for both of them is not getting over my skis and just doing it step by step, holding myself to my own standards rather than the expectations of where I want it to go. I would say that's probably the most challenging part.
Awesome. What is one book you'd recommend for personal development or mindset?
Oh, you can't ask me that question. I'm a book nerd. There's so many that roll through in.
Well, that's why I asked, so I can kind of learn from some people too, and other my audience can too, and we can get more knowledge, because I love reading too.
All right, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you, the last 2 years, I've reread books more than I've read new books. This has been a big thing that has helped me a lot, is books that have impacted me before, I've went back and reread, maybe in a different mindset, I'm in a different stage of life, and see if I got the same impact or new things from. The book I've read more than any other is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think everybody should just read that book. I've worn out my copy of that. I've probably read that about a dozen times now, and I still get good stuff from that. Mastery by Robert Greene is another book that was hugely impactful to me. So it talks about the 3 stages of mastery that he puts in: apprenticeship, creative active, and mastery. Robert Greene, if you've never read his books, are so deeply dense and such good substance in there. They're more challenging for me to read. I have to be in a really I need to be in like a note-taking feel to read Robert Greene's work. I think Ryan Holiday's work is kind of like the Bud Light to Robert Greene's Bud. Like, it's a little bit easier digestible, but kind of very similar. I love his work of getting in. The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, I think, is a book that everybody, should read, about getting out of your own comfort zone. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, greatest book I think ever written, because it was a book that none of us were supposed to ever read. It was his own personal diary. He'd probably be mortified if he knew that so many people read it. And the most powerful person ever at that time in the world, writing very human things. I thought that book is absolutely insane. And then I'll give the greatest novels ever written, Harry Potter 1-7. So everybody should read those from there. J.K. Rowling created I know she's been under a lot of scrutiny with a lot of shit in work, but she created a universe that I think if you want to know about storytelling, freaking, oh my God, I'm such a dork with that stuff in there. But just the writing and the creativity of those books will be my other recommendation right in there. So, and Calvin and Hobbes, go read all of Calvin and Hobbes.
Awesome. Appreciate that. How can people get a hold of you?
So you can go find me on social, my Facebook, Michael Kurkowski. You go to my Instagram, which is Michael_Strength Connection. As I said, I've got the podcast out there that you can listen to on all listening platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen there. Check out my YouTube channel, which is the Strength Connection that you can go check out. All episodes are on there that you can check out if you want to be more of a visual person. And then I have a free mindset training piece on my website, which is mystrengthconnection.com, all one word. And right at the top, it's called 5-Minute Mindset. This is how in 30 days of implementing these 2 practices that you go and start shifting your mindset into a more positive approach. So it's literally a 5-minute video. Go and check it out. Do this for 30 days, and it will drastically change how you approach your day.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put all that stuff in the show notes too. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. Yeah. I think the best thing I can say when it comes to health and growth is, one, it's going to take a lot longer than you ever think. So make sure you enjoy the process. And number 2, it's been told a million different times as a cliche, but all cliches come from truth, is keep habit changing simple. Like, just do it simply and get it down, and then move on to the next thing. And then you're going to always be progressing.
I couldn't agree more with that. Final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Find people that you can confide in. Most people, we think that, especially for men, that we think that we need to be the lone wolf and go into all the things that we're aiming at by ourselves. And I found personally, professionally, that having good people around you is so vital, and that you can talk to, because, one, you're going to realize that you're not alone. If you're going through it, if you're going through challenging times, it can feel like you're the only one going through and you got the weight on your shoulders. I've been there more times than I care to admit. You're not alone. Find good people, and more people than you think want to help and will help you. And doesn't mean everybody's going to be there, and you need to find the right people, but find good people. You get 1 or 2 good people in your life that you can talk to about the things that are really important to you. That's a greater strength than anything that you're going to find in the gym or in a book or in a podcast in there. Find your tribe.
That is awesome advice. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on here. I really loved your insight.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. I enjoyed this conversation.
Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.